So, Izzy, I came across your story on Instagram and my jaw hit the floor when I read through it and I listened to what your experiences was, especially as a handler for the Met Police, where you're employed and you're no longer employed. We're going to get into a lot today, but please, just to give some background and paint the picture in your own words, what was your journey into your post as a call handler for the Met, and what was your idea of policing before you started any
Sure.
of this?
Yeah, so it's not like I grew up always wanting to be in policing. That wasn't the case, but I'd spent a lot of time in my early 20s like working in hospitality, and I'm quite like vocal, and like there would be like disputes, like obviously drunk people, and I'd always found myself getting involved and trying to like, and I've never been shy to like speak my mind if something's wrong. So I just thought in my sort of mid 20s, right, I need to like try and find a career that doesn't involve alcohol. So I thought, well, policing, like advocating for people who can't, why not go into that? So yeah, I was always a bit apprehensive about being a police officer for two reasons. They just always get, the brunt of, you know, the worst perception from the public. Like I just didn't know if I wanted to throw myself into that at 25. And I had reservations about the police as well. Like I just didn't know if I wanted to represent the police that publicly. But I knew I wanted to help people. Also, I'm quite lazy, so I didn't really fancy running around being a police officer. So yeah, I just saw the 999 call handler role, and I thought, oh, like I can help people. I don't have to run around, and I won't physically have to risk my life every day. I will be safe, and I can still contribute. So yeah, I applied for it and did really well in all the exams. Felt like I was kind of suited to it. Didn't really have trouble in the training. And yeah, just the first couple of years was, yeah, it was really interesting, really, really interesting. And I felt like I was contributing.
When you were doing your training, what kind of things is a call handler for the Met Police put through? Like, what's the kind of general training, and how are you taught to handle, misconduct, which we'll get into?
So training wise, they just sort of give you like the rough sort of 18 crime codes that you have of general crimes, violence, sexual assault, etc., theft, and all of that, burglary. And then they kind of just give you as much information about those kind of crimes as they can. And then you have to do a couple of weeks of mock calls, and then if you pass that, then you go on to like coaching and live calls where you sit with a trained professional who sort of like watches you take real calls, and then once you're ready, you signed off. And yeah, so that's the sort of training. It's very gruesome. It's, you never really know if you have the job, because it's always like, okay, you have to pass this test, this test, this test, and it goes on for a while. And it's very intense, and you kind of almost form this sort of trauma bond with the other people. In terms of misconduct, you're not taught about it at all in the training. Nothing about misconduct, nothing about going in. I mean, in your briefly, like when you first start your training, they, like you spend like an hour going on about, you know, the policing ethics and values, which is like honesty, integrity, and compassion and professionalism, but nothing about signing up to wrongdoing, nothing about misconduct. And so yeah, you go in with nothing. Yeah.
I, I guess that's just implicit of what we think about police, because they are meant to be the law and they are meant to be the leading examples. So it's interesting that, even that is not written into the training. So it's almost foreshadowing. Uh,
Yeah.
because even any kind of, organization, whether it's government, policing, or whatever, if it has a very large responsibility, it does need to be governed by something, internally, because we
Yeah.
know that, like, there needs to be an organization to keep it fair, to keep it, moral.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we know that doesn't exist because I mean, when you say internal, I don't think anything that's moral and transparent and accountable can be internal. But yeah, no, you're not told. I guess maybe they could argue that they don't expect they think their policing is of high standards. So why would they train new recruits in standing up to misconduct if they think their force is fine? And policing is all about reputation. So I guess why would you have new recruits come in and then sit them down and say, right, well, if you come in and someone's racist or homophobic or whatever, this is what you need to do. Because I guess that kind of sets the tone that we're awful, and they don't want to do that because they don't want to put off new recruits, I guess. That's what I think.
Yeah, that is definitely plausible. When you started the job and you got into it initially, were you getting some kind of rewarding feeling from it? Were you feeling, connected to the job? Were you feeling that this is a job that you, as you said, you were very much suited to and you felt good in doing this role?
Yeah, I definitely did. I feel like I'm really, really approachable and really friendly and really calm on the phone. And I know for a fact that I could confidently say that people would be happy to have me on the other end of the phone, because when you go into call handling, there's like two different types of people. There's like friendly, approachable people that just like kind of want to help and just make people calm. And, because it's a really terrible time when someone's calling 999. Usually that's like the maximum sort of height of what's going on. And you need someone that's really, really friendly and calming. And sometimes on the flip side, you get really sort of robotic, harsh, unfriendly call handlers. So yeah, I even had people call up to say thank you for being so nice. I don't usually have nice people on the other end of the phone. So yeah, I felt like I was actually doing a good job. And even to the point where sometimes I'd get a call and it'd be like a serious sexual assault, and I would just think in my head, I'm so glad I got this and not the person across from me, because they are just horrible and on the phone, and I'm quite nice. So yeah, I felt like I feel like I was really good suited for it. You get sort of sick of little bits and part like bobs of the job, but apart from that, I thought, yeah, I was fully capable and perfect to help people in that hour of need.
So you start the job, you're getting your teeth into it, you're accelerating at it. What was the cadence of when your perspective shifted of, what was actually going on in terms of malpractice and whatnot?
Well, before the sort of incident that triggered this all, I actually never had witnessed any kind of wrongdoing. Like there were grumpy people. People were grumpy, but that's like, who isn't grumpy? But I'd never witnessed anything terrible or really concerning until 2023, which was 3 years into it, where I sat next to a colleague and he made concerning comments, called a rape victim a slut, wished immigrants would F off back home, mocked Sarah Everard whilst I was on a 999 call in my ear, and followed me after work. And that was like, I guess like my whole opinion of the police didn't start to drop, like fully drop then. It was just like, oh my God, like how unlucky am I that I've actually been faced with someone like one of these like awful people. But when I really started to think, oh my God, the institution as a whole is just rotten, is when I actually got into the misconduct process, and sort of going through the whole sort of, well, going through the sort of circus of what it was. I mean, I reported him. I didn't hear anything for about 2 weeks about what was going on. People weren't notified, so then they were putting us together to work together. He'd been told that I'd made a complaint and had been given a welfare officer, and I had nothing, and I had no one to talk to about it. No one had reached out to me to let me know what would happen. So there was like a real imbalance of support and welfare against me, and so that sort of happened, and there was sort of the odd failings sort of through the misconduct process. And then 6 months after I reported him in November, he was dismissed for gross misconduct at New Scotland Yard, which was really, really good. I was really, really proud and really, really happy that like I was believed, and like just that the Met were actually doing what they were saying, and that it wasn't just sort of lip service, and it wasn't just sort of promo, that they actually don't have space for people like this. And also like that they acknowledge that because a lot of people in society don't realize, like, I don't know if you're aware, but like the rape triangle, and like, you know, you have serious sexual assault and murder at the top, but at the bottom, you know, there's a catcalling, comments, inappropriate touching and stuff. And I was really, really like relieved that the Met was acknowledging the bottom end of that and not just thinking, well, you know, like the worst is the worst and we'll act on that, but you know, whatever to the bottom. So I was really, really like, I felt really proud to work for them, and I felt really safe and secure, and I was just really happy. And then put it to bed for 4 months. As you do, just get on with your life. And then dragged out of work one day for a 5-minute meeting to tell me he'd appealed one and was rehired, and was currently enjoying all the annual leave that he'd missed out on whilst he was dismissed. And they'd rehired him, even though the allegations were still proven in the appeal. And then it just sort of got worse. Huh?
Evidence?
So because on the day, like, you don't have CCTV in the actual call in the control room. All I had was the witness next to me. Also, I had to give all my phone records of that day, the next day, that week, of me speaking to people about what to do. But apart from that, no video evidence, no recording. There just wasn't. So that was another thing as to why I was really grateful that they believed me. But also I was told that there were other complaints made about this individual before that were never actually formally recorded into a written complaint, just that people had gone to higher ups and said, you know, this man's really weird, like, and then nothing came of it. So when it got round to my complaint, they always said, well, we're taking it very seriously because of the Sarah Everard comment, and we've been spoken to about him before. So yeah, no physical evidence. But I mean, even in the appeal, when I spoke to the decision maker, I said, like, if I'd have recorded this, would this have made any of a difference? And he said, no, wouldn't have made any difference. Even if you had video footage of him saying all of this, I still would have rehired him. So
Because they felt that what had happened to him, if I'm correct, is too harsh and too influenced by, obviously, Sir Markrowley wanted to do a big push on, you know, sorting out rogue officers and vulgar crime. And they said, what we've done here is more of a, essentially, thing to show that we're doing something, like a publicity thing, rather than actually dealing with it, which on our accounts is like absolute horse crap.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he said too harsh to dismiss him and deprive him of civil service work. I argued, like, no, that's what we need. We don't need people who are like racist, sexist, misogynistic in civil services. And that, the original panel were too influenced by the Casey report and the Vorg campaign. And the original panel were 2 women, a superintendent, another lady, I can't remember her title, and then a man from HR. So I know what I'm taking from that.
I think, you know, on the surface, it's very easy to like gloss over that for some people because they go, you know, I can't make a comment at work these days without being crucified. And it's all about context, you know, sometimes. Like, even like I look at my own family and we have a bit of a twisted sense of humor, but there's just some things that are right and some things that are wrong. So I wonder, actually, the people who were advising on your board, if it wasn't so much about what he did that was inappropriate, it was about what are other people in the force who say these kinds of things gonna think, and are they gonna turn against me because I've been seen to basically, you know, get rid of them, and then that puts fear onto other people. So it's actually not really about what's unfortunately happened to you, which is so wrong on so many levels. It's about, as you said, reputation. And essentially, like, it's when, how do I say it correctly? You know, when like things come out about, for example, Harvey Weinstein or P. Diddy and all these well-known celebrities, and men are like, well, it's not all men, it's not all men. We know it's not all men, but it always is men, you know?
Exactly.
And the people who have such a, you know, the people who protest about it so much and say, it's not all men, it's not all men, it's not all men, or, you know, it's not me. Usually they have something to hide. And I can't help but feel that that's reflected into what you're saying there. You know, the people on the board know that, like, there probably is like sorry to say this, but like a sizable chunk of people in the force who will be saying comments that they don't think they're inappropriate, but now in 2025 they are highly inappropriate.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it didn't really hit like I never thought about it like this until after in the last couple of weeks where people have been
It's
sort of
like
reaching
chess,
out.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that, because I even up until, well, even now, I still can't get my head around like why he was rehired. Like I just can't get my head around it. But some people were saying, which was really interesting, was that maybe in the appeal sort of part, because like when you go through the misconduct outcomes on any forces website, they're all published from officers anyway. There are much worse cases where officers have done worse and said worse, and they have got either less punishment or no punishment at all. And I wonder if, not that, because none of it is right, but that the guy I reported got rehired because, let's say, for example, a couple of weeks before, there was an officer that inappropriately touched another officer and just got reflective learning. So it would be it would be disproportionate to sack the guy I reported, because officers do worse and get less punishment. And I never thought about it like that. Because a couple of months ago there was a case published on the Met site, and it said there was an officer who had touched another female PC's private parts from behind while she was walking up the stairs and squeezed them, and he just got reflective learning practice to do like a course on like boundaries. And I just think like, okay, so that is like not like, I don't, we have fully grown adult officers having to go on courses about boundaries. So, and then when you compare that to the guy I reported, yeah, I guess maybe it's too harsh because your force is so bad anyway. It doesn't even get rid of people who are worse. So I guess it is too harsh and compared to your other bad decisions that you've made. But it's just a hot mess, really. One
I
big
don't
hot
even
mess.
really know what to say to that.
Yeah, I know. And there was another one, PC Vicente. I always talk about him. Sent multiple unsolicited dick pics to other female officers without their consent or requesting, and pursued multiple relationships with female police officers, even though they kept saying no. And he just got a warning because he did it a year before cyber flashing was a crime. And also, it was considered in a private WhatsApp group. So the harm was low because the public weren't aware. So completely bypassing any harm he would have caused to those female officers and potential victims in the future. So you have like an officer that's still serving today that's like a pervert and cyber flashes and doesn't know when no means no. It's
And it's meant to be
bizarre.
bringing out arrests on people for doing that.
Yeah, it's an absolute circus.
It sounds, to condense it all, it sounds like in order for, it is always women in these positions, but especially in the forces, like you said, the woman has to prove this and the man has to prove this.
Exactly.
So for the audio listeners, the woman has to prove extensively beyond doubt, like piles and piles and piles and piles of evidence, like more than what's enough. And the man has to, prove something ever so marginal that could poke maybe a slight hole in the argument. And that's the privilege that men get above women in this type of crime.
Definitely, because also there's this like real pedestal to, oh my God, it could be a false accusation. Oh my God, like she could be lying, and I don't know why. Like, I don't want to say people, because most of the time it is men, automatically go to that. Like, I've had that in comments in my social media, like, well, where's your proof? Maybe you're lying. Maybe you just wanted to date him and he didn't fancy you. And it's like, oh my God, what's in your brain to go automatically? Like, if someone told me they experienced something or were a victim of something, immediately I'm going to be like, oh my God, that's dreadful. Like, I'm so sorry. How can I help? Or I wouldn't go, prove it, really?
Yeah.
I think that's where, I mean, there have been some women, not really, to be honest, one or two, but the majority I get it from men. And I just think it's sort of in the umbrella of misogyny, really, just a sort of automatic disbelief in women.
I think, like, at the best, what people, like, at best, people usually say, something's happened. It's not been through court. It's not been through a tribunal. Yada yada yada. We're gonna wait. We're gonna see what the evidence is, and we're gonna see the court conclusion. Like, I think that's quite a fair and appropriate measure. But then listening to what you're saying, it's sounding like the system is quite rotten inside. So
Exactly.
yeah. And the thing is that I think when people do say, oh, well, you know, she's lying, da, 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 those are the people you need to be very, very, very careful with. Because why are you trying to protect someone who usually does have like a little bit of evidence against them so badly? Like, why are you riding for this person who, you know, is probably like guilty of this thing? You know, 1 in 4
Yeah.
women are sexually assaulted or raped in Wales and UK. So for me, it's even quite confronting that men, when they're faced with that data, they're not shocked and their jaws don't hit the floor. Like, I've had some men in my life, like, when they hear that data, they're just absolutely destroyed and distraughted that that's happening to their sisters, that it's happened to their mums, or, you know, whichever women are in their life. But it's so shocking that that does not shock other men.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
benefit from the system we're in.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And yeah, like you say, this defensiveness that they run to is very, very just suspicious. Like, and also it's, oh, she could be lying. It's so many people are so falsely accused. And they like to say, it's innocent until proven guilty. So then be neutral on both sides. But by doing that, you're automatically subtly victim blaming already. And yeah, I think it stems a little bit from misogyny. To assume that all women would lie, or to not even all women, but just to, I don't know, approach a woman you don't know and who's telling you something they've been a victim of, and assume they're lying, or, question them is really strange. And in my case, I've shown more than enough evidence. Even the Met have actually confirmed it in a statement to the BBC.
You've got a
Like,
witness.
I've got a witness, and also other people have contacted me since speaking out about their experiences with these individuals. The Met have confirmed it. Like, I can't give any more. And people still disbelieve, and I don't know. It's a whole psychology of weirdness.
I think the culture of she's lying or she's doing this for monetary gain, I actually think that's
Yeah.
a cloak. I think that's a blanket. I think actually what's behind that is actually like for them, the most serious way for them to absorb it is if a woman is raped in an alley, right? That's like rape
Yeah.
to them. But who cares if you've just smacked her on the arse? Who cares
Exactly.
if you've just like, said like something that is really offensive, like, oh, haha, rape.
It's just a
Who
joke.
cares?
Exactly.
Like, the thing is, we have comedians for a reason. They can do jokes and they can do them very well. But normal people also think that by implying these like kind of like really like harsh jokes, or like low level like vulgar behavior, they think it's okay and they can do it. And it's not the reality.
It's not. No. And if someone, people will call me a fun sponge, and that's what, I've been on the receiving a fun sponge, or like a party pooper. But my stance on it is that if you're making a joke and someone is on the butt end of, someone could be hurt on the butt end of it, it's not funny. It's really not. There are so many other ways to be funny, but to ridicule or pick on a community or a person or a thing,
or punch down,
or belittle. That's not joke. That's not banter. And if you think it is, in my personal opinion, you have very few brain cells. It's true though. You can't think of anything that's actually funny. You have to pick and laugh at another person or something. It just doesn't make sense. And if you are going to be one of those people with 2 brain cells, just do it in your own community. Just don't do it at all, obviously. But when you're doing it to people you don't know or out in public, it's just keep it to yourself. But I don't think there's ever an excuse for a joke that has someone's feelings on the other end of it.
Well, we've touched on the levels of, there's kind of like, what did you call it? Is it called the rape triangle?
Yeah, there's a rape, yeah, and it sort of shows the sort of, yeah, the little behaviours at the bottom, like catcalling and touching, and then, yeah, it escalates into like date raping and all of that.
So for example, like I have been in my past like an exotic dancer. So like I go into that environment knowing I'm gonna hear things that I know are in line with things I don't believe in, and I kind of just, because it like I myself am not going to like change every single person's mind, so I just kind of have to
Yeah,
be like white noise and like zone out
yeah,
and that kind of stuff. But I do think there is like an element of like, men in society who do listen and they do take things on board. For example, like I know so many of my friends and my family, if they made an off-color joke that was quite harmless, they would be like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize, I'm going to try
yeah.
better to not do that. And that's the difference. That's the
Yeah.
difference between someone who actually is listening to you and wants to change and realizes how uncomfortable it is for you.
Definitely. That's where accountability comes in. And when you make a mistake, when you make something without realizing and then you take accountability, that's so much more understandable than just taking defense and saying, oh, you're a snowflake. Like that's just a shutdown technique. But to take accountability and to respect and learn the other person's part of it or side of it. And also, unless you're a hermit, when you go about in life, you when you're out in public and if you live with people, you have to be respectful and mindful of other people. That's just humanity and that's just being decent. And if you just go about trumping all over the world saying what you want because you think it's fine and who cares about what other people think and if they get hurt because they're snowflakes and they can't deal with a joke, well, I'm sorry, but that's not the way to live.
Anyone who is even like slightly a little bit remotely liberal or center of liberal, you instantly get snowflake, you're this, you're that, you're too sensitive. But do you know how many times on this podcast and just in conversations I have to start my sentence with not all men,
Yeah,
do you know how
yeah.
many times like I can't even speak about my own experiences or help someone
Crazy.
speak about their own experiences with saying not all men. We know it's not all men.
We
Like,
do,
we know.
yeah. That's just another shutdown technique as well. And it's a technique used to derail the conversation. And I think people that use that are, trying to derail from the actual point and make it into an entirely different conversation.
It's incredibly weak as well.
Yeah, it is.
So you kind of have poked and kind of done some investigative journalism work within, the system you're in the Met. And I'm just going to read out some of the things you've uncovered that's going on, not just in the Met, but like wider within like the services, publicly funded services. So we've got officers sniffing victims' underwears in the evidence room. We've got a missing person detective wishing that the young missing teenager would have killed themselves so the detective didn't have to keep investigating. This is a long list, so we're going to have to stay all dialed in here. A colleague following another employee home when this was reported. The report was dismissed because it had happened multiple times for it to be taken seriously. A Met police officer under investigation for 2 sexual assaults at a different force, yet still being allowed to be posted with female officers on duty. The female officers feel uncomfortable. Also, this officer is making sexually inappropriate comments towards them. Superiors have been told but have ignored complaints. An employee in Avon and Somerset has been reporting that a senior officer from another force was driving drunk whilst armed. When the report was made, instead of support, they were faced with escalating reprisals. Multiple grievances have been submitted also. In the case of disability discrimination, whistleblowing, detriment and procedural failings, but none have been appropriately addressed. The treatment and the damage of the whistleblower's career, finances and mental health have been abysmal. Bullying because of disability to the point that someone has contemplated suicide. This was dismissed by senior officers as just banter. Failure at the senior levels, misconduct is not being taken seriously. complaints are widely ignored, and the culture tolerates bad behaviour.
Yeah, yeah. And it goes on, and yeah, it's horrendous. There are testimonies that have been submitted that I can't even publish because they're so explicit and they're so horrendous that a trigger warning wouldn't even suffice. So yeah, it's horrendous.
You know, this isn't, we keep on saying it, but this is not just, you know, made an off-color joke.
No.
You nudged me. I think it could be a little bit, you know, inappropriate. Like, you know,
It's not
this
just
is
that.
clear as day.
This is predators being enabled within policing ranks, and it's a clear show that you have hardworking officers and staff at the bottom, or I don't know, mid, going to work or doing a job, experiencing these horrendous things within the ranks, and then senior ranks, you know, just brushing it off. And that just shows that the corruption and the poison is bubbling at the top. And, you know, there are officers that are standing up and are speaking out, but they get shut down by senior officers. And that's where the rot is.
Well, so Markrowley, after the Sarah Everard murder by Wayne Couzens, he obviously got a lot of heat and he spoke to a lot of publications and articles. And he said in 2023 to The Standard, we're commissioning some research to see whether there are different tools that we can use out there to better psychologically assess officers. Is there anything out there that can help us spot people, the small number of people who might be joining us with malign motives? And I'm sure that means like the spot checks that happen without a police person's career. But my question is, why aren't you listening to the people who are telling you about the bad behavior firsthand? Like,
exactly. And especially from within. I don't understand. I think it's obviously because it damages reputation. So it's easy to ignore.
Like, I really don't understand that. Like, the evidence you've submitted, Issy, and the whole, you know, investigation you've had to go through, is that not evidence enough? How can you say you want to be doing something and you want change and you want to find tools to help find bent coppers or corrupt coppers and not listen to the people who it's actually affecting? Like,
do you know why I think it is? And what I've realised in the last couple of weeks since I've like publicly named and shamed the ones involved is before I thought it was just...
You can do it here.
What, name and shame?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've done it on my social media. I do it anywhere. You know, the director who rehired Chris, the colleague that I reported, the director is Jamie Johnson Cottrell. He is the director of the biggest operational command in the UK, which is the Met Command and Control Room. And he was the one responsible for rehiring Chris, who said, you know, all these racist and misogynistic and horrible comments and following me. Well, after I named and shamed him, other people who'd previously worked with him had got in contact with me and told me, oh, he must not have told the Met when he applied that he's actually under investigation legally for racism and disability discrimination. So, which is still ongoing legally. So this man, the senior ranking police staff member, who's the director of a massive department overseeing response officers, dispatchers, control rooms, etc., specialist control rooms, all of that. He's been hired by the Met, even though he's been taken to a tribunal and just been investigated by his previous employment for racism and disability discrimination that's still not finished. That is so concerning. And what I've realised now is that the reason why I think markrowley or the Home Office or, you know, the powers that be don't want to actually take action in terms of serious misconduct is because it's senior ranking officers. And I'm not just talking about line managers and whatever. It's directors of departments. It's assistant commissioners. I mean, the assistant commissioner that's the director's line manager in my case is now under investigation for bullying, and she's under markrowley. So it's the reason why nothing is being done is because all the rot and all of the misconduct is markrowley's team. It's the assistant commissioner. It's the deputy assistant commissioners. It's all up there, and that's why nothing's getting done. So yeah, and then obviously that trickles down into, the officers that are doing it as well. But in comparison, and I feel sorry for officers and staff because they get the brunt of what their senior leaders are doing. And that's why nothing's getting done, because it's in Scotland Yard, I like to say, where all the senior leaders are sitting in their ivory towers, being racist, enabling misogyny, homophobia, being predators, enabling, covering up child grooming gang scandals. That's where it is. It's in Scotland Yard.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to ask you, but you've kind of answered my question. If you were to hesitate a guess of the things you've witnessed, is there more of an age thing of officers who are offencing these kind of misconducts?
Well, I did notice when I was in the control room, when I was in call handling and I was in dispatching, more so when I went into dispatching, because dispatch is where you have your sort of old school people that have been there for ages, like 30 years, and you've got lots of retired officers that have come back to help out in the control room. There's an attitude where it's snowflake, everyone's a snowflake. You can't say anything nowadays. Or, well, back in my day when we were in the Nick 30 years ago, we would snog victims behind the counter or something like that. Like, it's like you can't tell them to change their
what? You would do what with the victims behind the counter?
Like, they would take them on dates or something like that. And then another one was like, yeah, we would all have sex in Scotland Yard during night shift when we're supposed to be on call. Like, all these things of like stories of what they would do 30 years ago that they would, like, I don't know, brag about or whatever. And you can't tell them to change their attitude because they're so stuck in those ways. And it's kind of almost offensive to tell them that, hey, that's not the attitude anymore. We can't behave like that. But they sort of have this, I've been an officer for 30 years. I've given my life to the Met for 30 years. You can't tell me any different. Kind of, you can't change older officers' opinions. And a lot, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but there's something like after 30 years service or something, I think, this is what I've been told, you secure your pension or something, or some sort of benefits from policing. And a few people have spoken about it, that you can sort of notice. Someone always said to me, it's funny, you can notice when someone's secured their 30 years in their pension, because then they start acting like an asshole after that, and they don't care about misconduct, because even if they do get dismissed, they'll get their pension anyway. So yeah, there is an age thing, but you just can't tell an officer that's been doing it for 40 years that things, they just don't like change. I guess I don't know what it is, but yeah, there is an age thing.
Like, I'm sure everyone's grandparents, they sometimes put their, they put their like foot in it and they don't mean to, but it's not an excuse. Things do change over time, but the question to those officers who say those types of things to you is, why has the attitude changed? Because there is obviously something fundamentally hurtful or harmful that people feel that the environment has had to change. People just think it's, they're trying to take away my right to have a laugh, they're trying to take away my right to live a life, and this and that.
Exactly.
No one's trying to do any of that. We're just trying to say, stop the harmful stuff.
To be decent. Yeah, to be decent. Exactly. And this is where, it sort of spills into sort of the dark humour. I don't ever think dark humour is acceptable. I've met multiple officers who've served 40 years, whatnot, who are very, very decent, and they've been to traumatic jobs. They've dealt with horrendous, child abuse cases, and they don't have to sort to dark humour or joke about rape victims or joke about child abuse or people dying. Like, that's not an excuse to deal with trauma.
Dark humour. I would just call it like
just
probably
grossness.
Like discriminatory behaviour guised as humour.
Exactly. So, you can't change it though. That's what I keep saying. Like, a society, like, and like you say, like, maybe with your grandparents, if they make comments, they're from a different generation, and they haven't really sort of caught up, or they're stuck in their ways. Okay, that's one thing. But you're in policing, and policing, you're trained. Every time something changes, policing trains and says, right, okay, things are like we're seeing, like now, like a year before I left, there was this whole training about we need to change the way our language is on the phone, because some things can be victim blaming. Like, if you get a missing person, there used to be a question like, well, how many times have they gone missing in the past? And that kind of had like an air of kind of
Blameful.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, blameful or whatnot. So we had to alter that. So there's always this sort of updating of what's wrong. And there's just no excuse in policing, like, to have these kind of attitudes. And there's no there's just no excuse. And it's, yeah, just old officers and staff taking offence, because how can you attack their job that they've been doing for so long? How dare you? But yeah, it's I kind of just like forgot my train of thought now. But just, yeah, there's no excuse whatsoever.
I kind of read you that long list that details from your own work, ongoing things that are going on in the Met and the wider services. Is there something I'm missing? Because I'm sure you've got like a whole litany of things.
As in, like, from testimonies that people have. Well, I mean, there are themes. There are themes that you can't avoid. Themes of bullying, senior staff shutting down complaints. A lot. I think the majority of the testimonies that I've got have come from women. So I don't know if that's because they're most, like, generally the victims of it, or because I always say, like, I feel like maybe it's been easier for me to speak out because I don't know, but I just feel like maybe if I was a man, or it might be very hard for male police officers or staff to speak out. Whereas I don't know. I feel like it's always harder for men. We know this with mental health and everything like that. It's harder for men to speak out, and also maybe the retaliation from other men might be worse. But I do feel like women seem to be more comfortable, or I don't even want to say brave enough, but I seem to be getting more women engaging. But maybe that could be because I'm a woman, and I might be attracting that. But yeah, the themes are bullying, being ignored, senior ranks being, just closing ranks and not dealing with things properly, and also this air of no accountability at the top. So you have officer, line manager, superintendent, commander, whatever, but then once you get to the top, there's no one there. And even if you're in policing and you see something bad and they fail to deal with it, and then you take it to your MP, then they say, sorry, we can't get involved because then that would undermine the police. And then you take it to the Home Office and they would say the same. And then you take it to the IOPC, which is supposed to be independent, and they would say, sorry, no, you have to actually speak with your Home Force. The Home Force has to self-refer themselves if we have to intervene. So there's nowhere for people to go, officers, staff, or public, when the police aren't doing the right thing. Yeah.
So this thing starts with having good people in the top of the tree, right?
Yeah.
Because as well, like, I hate to say it this way, and it sounds so morbid, and I might get some hate for it, but is it just a case of letting the dinosaurs die out?
What do you mean by that?
So officers, who we said aren't fundamentally going to change the way they think because it's just so far on in, their position and their age, that they have not even 1% interest in changing how they look on things. And that's never going to change. So until, unfortunately, they leave the force or they pass away, and newer people who are raised with maybe, more fair and more, better,
decent policing, just what policing's supposed to be. Maybe that would be great in an ideal world, except
it needs to be
it's
happening
already
now.
It's already trickling down. It's already trickled down into lower ranking officers, like senior officers. So I think it's too late for. I think I used to always think that, like, gosh, once these old sort of staff and officers leave, it'll be better. But I mean, a clear example is the department. I mean, I'll probably get like some undercover account come and attack me for this, but in the last department I was in dispatch, there was a horrendous bullying culture, and I raised concerns about it so many times and it was just ignored. And what you would notice is that you'd have these older officers and staff who were like the height of it, absolutely dreadful. Like, I always used to say, like, someone will end up hurting themselves one day because of this bullying. And then, you'd think, okay, well, they've only got a few years left till they retire. So, like, hopefully they'll, when they go, it'll be fine. And then you'd have new dispatchers coming down. But you'd slowly start to see that to be able to fit in that environment, the new dispatchers would have to start bullying as well, other people, so that the bullies wouldn't bully them and that they would fit in. So it already trickles down. Like, I don't know. The only way to get rid of it is to just, like, I always say this, you don't just put a plaster over an infection and hope it goes away. You get rid of it. So the only way to get rid of it is to completely dismiss anyone that shows you any light of this.
Dispose of it and start again.
Exactly. Like, completely rip it out. And I think that's where the difficulty is as well. Like, there was one particular person in the last department I worked in who was absolutely dreadful. Like, she was a monster, like an absolute monster, like Trunchbull times 10. People were actually suffered with like panic attacks if they knew that they were going to go and work with her. And I raised concerns just before I left and said, you need to address this. Everyone knows this is going on. Higher ups know this is going on. But because she'd been there for about 30, 40 years, she was highly skilled and very reliable. If there were a lot of new people on, at least she was there. So, the job would be fine and officers would be all right on the street and whatnot. So there's that thing of, they don't want to get rid of awful people if they've got lots of skill set, which I think is just irrelevant. Like, if you're gonna, then that's where the whole problem comes into it, of it being a business, caring more about skill sets and statistics and money instead of actually just staff welfare, public welfare and officer welfare. But yeah, it's just terrible, absolutely terrible.
The way the power structure works sounds a lot like mafia, what you just said there. The fact that, okay, it's not exactly like mafia, but you're bullying someone. So in order an individual is bullying someone, but in order for that person to stop being the subject of the bullying and to have quote unquote respect, they have to start bullying.
Exactly.
So then that person can feel cool with that person because they've got something on them in case it goes wrong. Well, so-and-so was doing it as well. And then it escalates and escalates and grows and grows and grows.
Exactly. It's terrible.
In terms of when you left, what was the actual, were you put on gardening leave? Did you just leave on your own accord? Did you get any, compensation from it?
No, nothing. So I had a really bad spout of just like, I'd found out like my reports had been buried for 5 months and whatever. My mental health went through the window and I had an incident with my car where I tried to unalive myself on the way to work. And they had said, right, well, we won't put you on high risk roles because obviously you're very unstable. And so I was like, great. And then they kept doing that because business needs obviously trump staff welfare. So I left and I resigned and I worked. I thought, well, I don't want to like lose a reference. So I'll work like my notice. Like, I don't want to lose my reference.
Yeah.
I spent 5 years there and it was meant to be my bloody career. And then they asked me again, and then I was like, right, I can't even work my notice anymore. So I just was signed off sick by a doctor, and I wasn't given any compensation or anything, nothing. I'd stopped getting sick pay. They refused to give me sick pay for when I was off. So no, I just lost out. No compensation. I mean, I didn't really know. I think there is something you can do where you can apply for your employment to pay you whilst you're undergoing legal advice or employment legal advice, but I didn't know it at the time. So no, I didn't get anything like that. But yeah, I just sold all my belongings and my car and my clothes and my books to keep me going.
So, just to put it into perspective for the audience, you're working as a call handler. You see something that is not in line with the police values, and it's gross misconduct and it's not acceptable. You take it to the people who ask you to report it when you see that
Yep.
kind of thing. You report it. You have faith that the system is going to do its thing, and you wait and wait. They actually do end up doing something, and they let this officer go. But then they realize, actually, this doesn't look the best for us, and this is not going to help us retain police officers because the system is corrupt. So what we'll do is we'll bring him back, and we'll kind of just forget about you, and we'll kind of just, if you work with him on the same kind of job, that doesn't matter either. And essentially, you get nothing out of stepping like out of your way to speak truth to power. You get nothing from that. And that just shows the corruption of how you cannot report things at work because it's not safe fundamentally.
No, exactly. I mean, when I was told that he was coming back, and just for clarification, he was a police staff. I said, okay, well, fine. Like, this is disgusting, but like, am I going to work with him? And they were like, oh, we don't really know. Like, we'll like let you know and have like a conversation about it. Didn't hear anything for about a month. So then by that time, I was so anxious, like leaving the workroom, looking around the door, like in case I saw him. Because bearing in mind, he's very intimidating. He's very creepy. The whole way through the gross misconduct hearing at Scotland Yard, he was leering at me and staring at me, making me feel very, very uncomfortable. And obviously the whole incident after work on that day I reported him, following my journey.
And it's been
I was
acknowledged by
very,
the police.
yeah, I was very, very, very anxious. I was very scared. Every officer or staff member I saw with mousy brown hair and the same glasses, I like instantly thought it was him and would start panicking. Every sort of uniform I would see, I would be triggered because I'm like, well, this is such a farce. Like, we're all standing here pretending to like care about people who are calling up saying they've been followed and they've been racistly being had racist comments to them, and then there's people who do that here. So yeah, I lost my train of thought again. It's just I always get into like rants
Yeah.
about it, and then I just lose. But yeah, and then no, I didn't get any. Oh yeah, so they didn't tell me. They wouldn't tell me if he was coming back to my centre, and I was like, please, for my safety or my mental health and well-being, can you move me somewhere else, or can you move him somewhere else? I can't. I actually can't physically take coming into work every day and facing that. I really can't. And you know, he spread some really malicious rumours about me, all that were disproved and discredited in the misconduct hearing. But you know, he's really particularly quite dangerous. And yeah, they didn't tell me what was going on. And after a month or two, I had to beg and plead for them to move him to another centre. So they did that. So fine. But then what happened was, you know, I was kind of like, okay, great, you're just moving the problem, but fine. And they told me, as for the foreseeable, whilst I was working in Lambeth, he would be in Hendon and I wouldn't see him again. Great. After a year, I thought I'd seen him. So I went to go and speak to someone and I was like, I think I can see him over there. Can you check if he's in the building? Because he's not supposed to be here. And they were like, oh no, like it's only for a year that he's supposed to be in Hendon and then he's coming back to Lambeth. So it's like, oh my God, no one was even going to tell me that he was going to come back after a year. And I would have just come into work one day and seen him. Like there was no duty of care to let me know what was going on or what was happening. And yeah, it just, no duty of care whatsoever. And I dread to think what would have happened if I hadn't have caused a fuss and I'd have kept working there, because this man is so dangerous. He showed complete escalation in behaviour. And I really worry, well, I know from speaking out that after I left and he was in Hendon, he then got the name of Creepy Chris, and even male colleagues had to warn female colleagues to not sit with him and be wary of him because he's that dodgy. So, you know, it's just shocking.
What's the nature of the rumours he started saying about you?
So during the investigation, the first one, the gross misconduct, he after I did my statement, etc., and then the investigation officer did his statement, he tried to say, and this is hilarious. He tried to say that I'm a malicious complainer. I make complaints about everyone to their professional standards. I've never made a complaint before in my life. There's no record of me making a complaint. I even had to ask for help from several senior officers on the day of complaining about him on how to do it. There's even like records on my computer of me searching, how do I complain about a colleague? You know, that was completely disproved. And in the gross misconduct hearing, you know, they had to say to him, okay, so what would be her motive if she was lying about the whole thing? I'd never ever spoken to him before in my life. He'd said one thing over a desk a month or two before in a group conversation that I was part of, but I'd never directly spoken to him. I didn't know his name. I didn't know him at all. It's not like we were dating and I was like bitter about him or something like that. He couldn't give any defense as to why I would make it all up. And so yeah, he just tried to say that I was mental health and malicious complainer, and that just wasn't the case. And
Like
obviously
you're a
just
bit
damaged.
snowflakey and OTT and
Well,
sensitive.
that's what he, after a couple of weeks ago, one of his colleagues that worked with him in the centre after me actually said to me that when she sat next to him one day, she said to him, why were you moved here? And he said, oh, because a girl in the other centre couldn't take a few funny jokes. So, you know, it's just ludicrous, and that's admitting, you know, and it's just pathetic.
And I wonder how he would feel if, let's say, gay men felt entitled to straight men the way men feel entitled to make certain jokes about women.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wonder
Well,
what the response would be.
I can probably guess, but he wouldn't like it, obviously, and yeah,
It would
this man is very dangerous.
it would be pure violence. That's what would happen.
Definitely,
Pure
it
violence.
really would. It really would.
Are you familiar with the case of Di Maria?
No.
Sergeant Di Maria? Yeah, he had done
Oh, sorry. Yes, yes, yes. Vaguely, vaguely.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because he got the whole scandal around him was that he got lots of like gardening leave and like high payments for when he was like obviously, you know, found, well, he wasn't technically found guilty, but there's like evidence of him doing things that are not in line with what a police officer should be doing. But I just think it's to contrast with what you had to go through and the support he got versus the support you get is just night and day, you know?
Yeah, and do you know, I always said that because if you like were to do like a pros and cons list or whatnot, and you put me on one side and Chris, the guy I reported, on the other side, the amount of support and early intervention support he got compared to me is shocking. Like I had to like beg for a welfare officer like months later. Well, from the start, I was begging for one. Didn't offer me at all. They gave him a welfare officer straight away. He had his union rep straight away. I was told not to speak to a union rep because I'd done nothing wrong. Obviously, I'm going to follow advice. He had so much support. He didn't even speak in the gross misconduct hearing because he had people with him to do that. I was told not to do that. Like it was very imbalanced. And the Met like to paint that as because like, oh no, you're such a strong woman, like you don't need any support, like you've got this, like look at you, you're so vocal and strong. And it's like, shut up, like you just didn't want to support me.
Yeah. Are you allowed to say his surname?
Oh, I'll just say it anyway. Yeah, Christopher Timmins. I posted his pictures on my social media. Best thing I've ever done in my life, and I've protected people more than the Met ever would. So yeah.
Obviously, like you've now kind of moved on and you've started to build, you know, this organization called Speak Up UK. And I guess what you're trying to do is you're trying to create sorry, it's so bad today. You're trying to create a organization, a service that helps better aid whistleblowers and helps them feel more empowered and protected to blow the whistle on things that aren't fundamentally right. Talk to me a little bit about that and just how it came about after? Well, I think we know how it came about. You wanted to create something that would build
Yeah.
change, but like your
Yeah.
journey of doing that.
Yeah. So, I spent months after leaving the Met trying to find work, and it wasn't working out. And I'd get a job, and then when it'd be social media, it would fall through. And my activism is very vocal, and I go and protest. So I don't think a lot of employers like that. So I thought, right, I want to help people. I need to work for myself in some way so I can still campaign. And I spoke to someone for advice, and they said, make a CIC organization, and hopefully one day you'll be able to pay yourself and you can support people and help people. So Speak Up Now UK, it started off just as a website where people can submit testimonies. I was always so impressed by Everyone's Invited, which is about the school education sexual assault. And so I wanted to do something similar, because when you're in public services, there's always policies like you can't speak out because it will put the service in disrepute. And I just find it so gross that there's those sort of silencing tactics in their policies. And I just wanted to give a platform to the silent voices from these services about what's going on. And so I started building some testimonies, and then I started getting a team that are helping. Like, we now have a wellbeing department, operations department, and stuff like that. And we are going to be introducing this winter something called the Hub, where when I whistleblew, I found it so overwhelming, because I had to go to a lawyer for legal advice, then I had to go to counselling for counselling in a separate place, then I had to try and find a journalist to handle the media side of it, and then finances, I had none, and it's so overwhelming anyway. And then to juggle all of those things and manage all of those things was really, really, really difficult. And so I want the Hub to be somewhere where you can get legal advice in-house at Speak Up Now, media assistance with a trusted journalist that got my story out there, who does all the national papers. If you want to speak to the media, we'll be able to give financial grants to people, because a lot of people have messaged us and said, I'm going through this, I'd love to speak out, but I have a family and I have a mortgage, and I just can't risk losing my job. And I just think how cruel that we're so economically dependent on employers that we can't even speak out and do the right thing, because we're scared of losing everything. So I want to be able to give financial grants that if people do lose their job or they need to leave because it's horrible because of everything they've gone through, we can help them in the interim till they find employment, and also offer counselling. So it's all in one place, and it's as less overwhelming as possible, and also so that encourages more people to whistleblow, because they know it's an easy and safe process, and so that's really the goal. And we've got a documentary series coming shortly, with about 14, 15 different whistleblowers from all different services, sitting down, telling their stories, some anonymous, some public facing. And yeah, just platforming stories and just making whistleblowing a positive thing. And that's why a lot of my branding is yellow, because I don't want whistleblowing to be like, first of all, I've never understood why whistleblowing even has a name, because that should just be the standard. And then if you don't whistleblow, that's got a name, because it should be that, telling the truth is just normal. But I just want it to be positive. I don't want it to be a scary thing.
It does sound that, especially in the Met specifically, when it comes to accuser and the person on defense gets so many more resources than the person making the accusation or the complaint, which just shows you the balance. As we said, you've got to prove 100%, they've got to prove 1% that it might not be true, but just well done for what you're doing. It takes a lot of guts, Issy, to stand up to a system that we all know is meant to be protecting us, but are just in reality protecting other people. And it goes without saying also that there are really good police officers out there probably who are just upset as we are with the system.
There are, but they need to make noise too, instead of taking offense and taking it personally, like what I'm doing and what other whistleblowers do. I always say, join us, speak out, champion truth telling and champion making change in policing. Don't just be annoyed that we're attacking the police. Join us, make it better.
And also, if people really had this culture of accountability, of being able to, say, look, put my hands up, I did something, and even almost like admit themselves to systems, it would almost be self-filtering that you wouldn't need a whistleblower organization, you know.
Exactly.
If people just held themselves accountable, I think there would be so much more trust, you know. Like, if you look
Definitely.
at, like, the organizations in the world, or like even families or friends, the best groups in life are the people who have that relationship where they can speak to one another and say, look, I don't think that was right, like,
Yeah,
can we, you know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because that's how you grow and that's how you can become better. And it's what is so ironic is that in the core policing values and principles is accountability and owning up to mistakes when you've done wrong. And that is what the Met cannot do. So it's very funny.
Yeah, and you have to remember equality feels like oppression for people who've always been on top.
Exactly. Exactly. I like that. That's very good. You need to get that on like, I don't know, some sort of quote website.
If you found this episode interesting or enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button down here. It helps me out more than you know. I'm an independent production. Or check out one of our past episodes here. There's one here, there's one here. That's what I'm imagining.